So where does the original go once he's done with the wax and it's cast?
All right, well, pretend this is in silver. This is cast in silver from his original carving, and he'll have thinned the back down a little bit in the wax, but not too much because he needs the metal to flow in the original without being a mistake or having a piece blow out. So he'll cast it thicker, but then it took him a month to thin this silver out, the silver master model. So he'd be sitting there spinning with burrs, taking it down thinner and measuring it so it was 0.75 everywhere. This direction, this direction, this direction. That way, when you took that silver model and you made the rubber mold and you took the silver out, the negative space in the mold was the right thickness for the wax to be shot in. And then, of course, when the wax is burnt out of the plaster, it has a really good flow rate of this 18 karat or platinum to shoot in. If it's too thick, it's too heavy. If it's too thin, the metal doesn't flow through the whole piece, because that's a long way for metal to go, this distance. So a lot of effort was put into thinning this correctly and curving these edges so that the metal could flow without snapping off an edge or breaking some of the plaster in the casting. Then the master silver you're asking about is put in the safe in master silver boxes, and every time the mold wears out, you go and take a new master rubber mold of this and then you put it back. It's the most valuable thing. It's not the jewelry, it's master silvers. Now, they don't need to be made out of silver. They could be made out of brass or bronze, but silver's easier to work and more forgiving, easier to fill, solder, carve.
Does he texture the master mold, the master set, so that the staff knows how to texture it, or is that something that you guys just decide to?
It's a very good question. It's never textured beforehand. There's detail. This detail you'll see here is in there. These bumps. Not the hammering and not the milligrain. This little milligrain line. This little milligrain line are added afterwards. All this texture is added afterwards. So the reason is you compress all the surface molecules when you take the time to hammer the surface and engrave the surface and set. All the metal gets more compressed. So it's harder. The metal's harder. But that's all the handwork that's done. And he shows the shop how to do it, what he's looking for in the piece, because he makes all the first ones. But the most interesting part happens when someone is just the person hammering, and she's been with us 20 years. She can do this better than Alex. And she'll come up with nuances, and she'll say to him, are you sure you want this kind of hammering? It looks a little big. Why don't we use a finer hammer tip here? Why don't we use a needle point here so we get... She knows already this will become dark. Some finishes pick up patina better than other finishes. And this is a good example. This will stay bright. This picks up a patina. So it's a very important distinction is that a lot of the staff is better at their part than Alex. He's done it all. He can do it all. But they add so much to his work by backing him up with an expertise in each thing they do, from the clasps, the mechanisms, the hinges. He doesn't have to do those. He can. But he does the engineering and the design, but they actually improve to another level.
So this hinge is something that he designed for this specific bracelet?
Yes, and in this case, it's one of the few bracelets that has a hinge that's hidden, nicely hidden, the way he designed it. The improvement was, well, first the funny thing is, he put one little hole here in the bracelet, no other holes, and I asked him why, and he said it's for the ticket. Because you're always complaining the ticket falls off cuffs. So he literally put that hole there for the ticket string. The other thing that was an improvement is he came up with, this is a classic springed flipper, but it never had a stop. This, one of our jewelers developed a stop. It hooks right there. When it's done, it's done. You can't pull it any further. Used to be you could overstretch it, and it was not good for the bracelet. So that stop grabs the edge and it's done. And that's an improvement that comes from the staff. So it's nice to have people with so much talent for over 20 years. They come up with tricks we never even thought of. But again, it's the fact that Alex is a true hands-on designer. The idea comes from his head to his hand to the piece. And that's so rare today. You don't see that in many things, except maybe woodworking. But this kind of carving is, he says, if I waste the time drawing it, I don't feel like making it. So if I can almost, by carving it, he's doing it first time. And if you were in our shop, I could show you dozens of half-finished, a drawer full of half-finished carvings, because he just, if it's not going well, if this wasn't going well, he just tossed the drawer and start over. It's easier to start over than try to fix and futz around with maybe this circle was too big. He'll just start over because he's that fast. Better to pull another canvas out, basically, because when you start getting hung up on one problem, you're going to waste time, especially with his skill. So that's a very distinctive point to make with the staff and the customer. There's nobody else doing that level of, I'm just going to make it. So I usually have some real waxes, some real silvers, and some real older tools of his to show you what he does, because to see a half-finished Alex wax is interesting. If you only saw half that sticking out of something like that, you'd be like, whoa.
So when he does, like, if he did this wax, would he do just one side of it first, or would he start with the full thing?
No, think of the basic form. He would carve a round dome disc out of this. He'd carve a flat, smooth bangle out of a big chunk of wax. He'd leave it very thick so he could hold it and work on it and not have it break suddenly. Then he would thin it later. Rings all start out as domed rings, smooth. The other trick he does to do the layout is you know the shaker pens that you have that are gold or silver for Christmas? You make a Christmas card out of them, you shake them. He uses those to coat the wax gold color, so then when he cuts through it, you can see where he is, where the lines are. So if he's cutting that circle, he'll be cutting through that gold paint, and you can see the green underneath, because the waxes are green. And so he'll be carving like that, and he'll have the real strong contrast between the undercolor and the gold paint. So it helps him also see the depth of the carving. If you coat this with gold paint, you can now see how deep that cut is. So I've always enjoyed watching him work. I very rarely in 25 years have seen him sit and work, because he likes to be left alone. He doesn't want someone hanging around him. But when I see, in the morning, I see a block of wax, and at lunchtime I see a finished piece, I'm like, how did you do that? He's like, oh, I just carved. You know.
Set up a camera.
Yeah. And that he doesn't even want. It's so funny. He's pretty shy about it.
It's lazy, though. Something that should be documented. Just once at
Just
least.
once.
Yeah.
I've always said that. But we'll see if we can get a crew in there this next year. He's funny. He says, I don't want to give away the mystery.
Doesn't even have to be a person, just like a camera on top of him.
Yeah, but I think a true cinematographer would get things that he wouldn't expect. Up angle on his carving, or his expression, or things that are their profession they do.